Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge and welcome to my weekly reading wrap-up. I think this is week 9. I think it's week 9. Hold on, let me check. Yes, week number 9. Holy crap, how did that happen already? The end of February, after I film this video, I'm getting my end of February stats ready. So February, for being the shortest month, I still read a good amount, which I'm really happy about. And this week, we actually have 18 books to talk about. I'll tell you, it's a split between historical romance and the darkest of the dark contemporary romance, because Jen went on another mafia binge that led us to a sex trafficking series binge that has taken us to some interesting places. But first things first, I want to say a warm welcome to 2 new channel members that we have this week. We have Tiffany. Tiffany joined at the Faded Friend level. Thank you so much, Tiffany. Happy to have you. And then we have Scarlett, who joined at the Romantic Renegade level. Both of you, please, if you don't have Discord already, please make sure you reach out to me on Instagram or Twitter or whichever, so that I can make sure to get you the extra rewards that you get through Discord. But I'm so happy to have you join the channel. It means so much to me, particularly with this transition to a new job. All the help and support you guys give really just helps keep me motivated and to keep me focused on Booktube and the things that I love in my spare time. So enough of that. Let us dive into this week's reading because, y'all, there was a lot, okay? So let's go into this. Where's my page here? So I also have, one of these books actually is from last week, and I realized that, so here's the thing, I keep track of my books in a couple of places. One of them is Goodreads. I also keep track of them just in a notebook because I'll write some notes about them, the stars, and then they get entered into my Google Forms, which is where I track so that I can look at graphs and stuff. I've kept it very simple this year. In previous years, I've been a little more complex with how I keep track, and it just can get exhausting. But on the downside of sometimes when I go through a binge, I'm not always immediately writing down those books. And then we all know Goodreads. If you're sorting based on added date instead of read date or, you know, something or other, sometimes you miss them, which can be frustrating. So I missed one last week, so I just wanted to mention it real quick on here. I know I talked about it in my random vlog that I put up, so I was like, oh duh, you forgot to talk about it here. But I read Master of Salt and Bones by Keri. I gave this a 4.5 star. This is a dark contemporary romance. It is said to have vibes of Phantom of the Opera, Beauty and the Beast, and Jane Eyre. That is how it was kind of sold to me. I'd say it most heavily lays on Beauty and the Beast and Jane Eyre. And it really only has the Phantom of the Opera thing because, number one, people want to hear about a Phantom of the Opera retelling, but also because our heroine does play piano. She has a magic ear, basically. But not a lot is done with, like, the Phantom of the Opera parts of it. There also is, like, tunnels and stuff beneath this home. But anyway, what's this book about? This book is about a 19-year-old girl who gets hired by this estate to be a companion to this one man's mother who is supposedly mad, and she needs a companion, and previous companions have not been lasting too long, and so this girl gets hired to do that. And then there is our hero who is 30, and there's some serious sexual chemistry between the two of them. There's a little bit of like submissive dominant vibes going. Also, this book, any and every trigger warning you have ever thought of, okay, not ever, is in this book. There is child molestation, there is rape, there is dubious consent, there is non-consensual consent, there is some body horror, there is self-harm, there is death of a child, there is a lot, okay? There is a lot in this book, but I really enjoyed it. I always feel weird when I list out all the trigger warnings, but this is a week for that, you guys. So definitely in more detail, check out the trigger warnings for that. But it was really great. I liked kind of the mystery going on. There's a bit of secret society vibe happening in this series. And oop, the light is never exactly what I want. There we go. So I really liked how Keri told a story, and I'm always up for a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Again, the Jane Eyre vibes in this were very strong. I love a Jane Eyre retelling. That's my favorite classic. So if you like those things, this could be a really good read for you, okay? Then I was told by my beautiful friend, Juliet Cross, and also by some of you, but she's the one who gave me the urgency to get to it, because I had read a book by J.T. Geissinger before, and I liked one of them, and then I read another one by her and didn't like this one, but I had never read any of her Mafia books. And so Ruthless Creatures, it's the beginning of a new series, and it is about, oh gosh, it's so good. It's so hard to even explain this book, but yes, my friend Juliet, she was like, Jen, you have to read it. This hero is amazing. You have to do it. And so if you love a hero who is obsessed with his heroine, this is going to make you so happy. And I don't want to say anything about it because I was so surprised by the plot. But this one does start out as this woman, she sees a guy at a bar. They end up hooking up with each other, and it's clear that he has a life that he's trying to keep her separate from. And he's like, if you choose to be with me, we will be together, and it will be great, but you can't ask any questions about what I do, and you just have to be okay with whatever I can offer you, right? That sounds like a sketchy setup. I don't know what else to say. I love this book. I gave this book a 6 stars. So you'll be hearing more about it in my monthly wrap up, because in my monthly wrap up, I talk about all of my 6 stars more in depth. So you can go there if you want to get more, because number one, I want to refresh my mind a little bit on some of the more details of that before I talk about it in that one. But also, if you feel like our Mafia recs sync with each other, like if you feel that when I talk about certain books like that, that you like them when I talk about them, you should read this one. That's the best thing that I can say, is that if you trust my Mafia recs, like if you've loved the ones I've given you before, you need to check this one out, because it was great. It was 6 stars. It was fantastic. I'm going to talk about it more often than other things. Then, as I said, this is some of the books that, I read in that vlog that I did, because I talked about on there that, so I always start a book in church. Yes, I go to church every Sunday morning, and I usually start a book during church. Usually it's an arc. Usually it's a book that I think I'll have a tough time starting, because this is kind of a funny thing, but I will listen to the preacher and then be reading a dirty book. Judge me, it's fine. A lot of you got a huge kick out of that reading vlog when I was talking about that, and then I was like, and then I was reading a gay romance in church. So, very progressive, y'all, right? But I started reading The Intern by Serena Akeroyd. Y'all, if you've been around lately, you know I love Serena Akeroyd, and I have read some of her. I read a menage by her before. I hadn't read just a plain MM before, but this one is an age gap romance. This is an office romance. This is one of them, he's kind of hiding who he is. I don't know. It's weird to say, because it's like he just will hook up all the time with kind of anyone, but he keeps the men a secret, and he actually owns a sex club just so that he can go there and have sex in the dark and not have anybody judging him. So, and then one night, one of these people that fucks him in there, he can tell that this guy has some dominant traits in him, but he's young. And when he goes to work the next day, they see each other in the elevator. And it turns out that this young man is his intern. An intern for his company. So he's not directly his boss, but I mean, he does own the company. And then when he sees this intern, he's like, what the fuck? And so they kind of start having this on the DL relationship, on the down low, just in case you've forgotten what that means. Sometimes I have people ask me what random acronyms mean, and I'm always happy to answer them, y'all. I always am. But it always makes me chuckle when some people don't know what they are, because I'm like, just assume everyone knows what that means. But anyway, what's also cool or different about this younger person is that they have been out for a year or so, but he'd never had sex yet. So he was a gay virgin, right? And I really like that aspect of it. I loved getting to see them explore that together, especially because he's a pretty dominant person. And so the give and take with, like, I love whenever a younger person is the more dominant one. I just get excited because I love odd power exchanges. So I love when, like, the woman is more dominant sometimes, especially in the bedroom, when the woman is more dominant, or when one member of the partnership is more than the other. I find it very interesting. But I really like that book. I gave it 4 stars. Serena Akeroyd knows how to tell a story. That's what I'll say. Then I finally finished Day of the Duchess in perfect time, because from when you will have seen this, I will have already had my live show about the Scandal and Scoundrels trilogy with Crystal. But tonight, the day that you're watching it, Sarah MacLean's going to be on my channel, and we're going to talk to her, not just about this series, but about her writing as a whole, and I'm so excited. Sarah MacLean, I have looked up to her before I ever read a single page of what she's written. I love her stories. I love just the human that she is and all that she does, and I love her podcast, Fated Mates. That's where I know her from more than her books. And yeah, and so I gave this a 4.5 star. Again, I'm not going to like say too much about it because we're going to talk in depth, but this is a second chance romance. There are a couple trigger warnings. There is a trigger warning for loss of a child in this. This is about Sarah and Mal and if they can fix their marriage or not. All of these series, Scandal and Scoundrel, they're based on like, not pop culture, but things that you've seen in the headlines, or fantastical things like that. And so this is that couple that's having a headline or divorce, you know, and how does a divorce get approved back in the time here? Like, I think when this one is happening, there was only like 200 or some divorces on the books that had like ever been approved and happened in England, I believe. Don't quote me, but I think that's mentioned in here at some point. And Mal, who these two have just hurt each other in quite a few different ways through their miscommunications. It's very like painful, and while some of it's believable, also some of it you're just like, please just talk to each other. You both want to be together. Why are you doing this to each other? But anyway, Sarah wants a divorce, and Mal agrees to give it to her if she finds him a replacement Duchess before she leaves. So this is about her bringing him options and teaching these women what her husband likes and what it would be like being his wife, and all the while he's using it as a reason to get closer to her and try to win her back. So I'm very excited to talk about this tonight with Crystal. Crystal loves Sarah MacLean, and I love Sarah MacLean, but I think very few people love Sarah MacLean the way Crystal loves Sarah MacLean, and I love that. I love talking with people about things that they so passionately love. And so I'm excited for us to dive into this, and I can't wait to talk to Sarah MacLean. I hope you come and join us. Then I continued a little bit on my male binge that I was on, and I read Kidnapped by the Pirate by Keira Andrews. This was recommended to me by Ashton. She popped in on that vlog that I made where I said, I'm feeling like I want to read male, and she introduced me to Keira Andrews. And so Kidnapped by the Pirate is a male romance. It is a older male pirate and this young man aristocrat who he's on his way to have an arranged marriage. His father is the governor of this small like island, and he's supposed to go there and marry who his father has chosen for him, but he gets kidnapped for ransom by a pirate. His sister is older than him, and she's going there back to her husband, and she's actually pregnant. And so he, you know, kind of throws himself on the pirate's mercy as like, please let my sister go home. Let her carry the message back to my father, and I will stay here as your your captive. There we go. So this is a captive romance. I did get some great Sea of Ruin vibes without all the dubious consent or non-consensual things, because as the relationship develops, the young man, Nathaniel is the name of the younger man who's kidnapped, and he has always had feelings for men. There was a tutor he used to have that he had a lot of feelings for, but he's never done anything about it. He thought he was weak. He thought he was twisted. And Hawk has had a great love in his life. That was a man before. And he's really more of just like a, you know, fuck when you can type of guy now. And having Nathaniel, because of course Nathaniel ends up in his quarters, because that's the only safe place is to be in the captain's quarters with him. They have this really beautiful relationship that unfolds with some sexual experimentation for Nathan as well. And I just had such a great time reading this. And so after I read that one, I read Beyond the Sea by Keri Andrews. This one was a contemporary romance, and it was actually two straight men. One of them is an assistant pilot, and one of them is a rock star. And it's a private chartered flight, and they end up crashing in the ocean. And the pilot, who's a woman, dies, and the assistant pilot and the rock star end up stranded on an island together for quite a few weeks. Again, they're both straight, or what they have seen as being straight before. And they're just, you know, a couple times as things start to progress and grow, that they're the only person that's there. And what starts as maybe just helping each other out really grows into something where they really care about the other person's heart and soul. And the things I really loved about this is I liked that it was gay for you ×2. I am a sucker for I've never been attracted to men before except you. I love that. Like, I am a sick, twisted bitch for it, okay? I love it. But I loved it even better that it was ×2, because sometimes gay for you can be very fetishized. And I mean, I don't mind him now and then either, because like I said, one of my favorites is that. But this one was so, it just felt so genuine, because it's like they don't know when they're leaving and they're having these feelings, and are they just sexual or is it more? And so this story was just really cool. And I also love survival stories. I love books where we're having to like live off the land and come up with inventions to keep ourselves fed and warm. And so I just really enjoyed this one. I gave Kidnapped by the Pirate was 5 stars, and Beyond the Sea was 4 stars for me. So those were great. Then I read another book club pick, kind of on accident. I just decided to start the audiobook because I had a hold of the audiobook. It was only $5 on a recent sale that Amazon had, or it's through Amazon, but that Audible had. And so I listened to Stranger in My Arms, which is our Rake Appreciation Society book club pick for March. And we're going back to having it be the second Thursday of every month. We gave ourselves a whole month to read these since we did the whole trilogy. But for this, we are going to have it on March 11th. And I believe it's at 7 p.m. CST. I'll put up the picture. Maybe I'm right or wrong, but here's the art that Crystal made that will tell us the answer. But I ended up wanted something to listen to, so I just started it. And then I was so sucked into this book that I just had to finish it, okay? So the setup for this book, I'm just going to read the back, because I think reading the back sets it up good without me giving anything away. And because this is a book club book and I'm going to be talking about it with Crystal, I don't want to say too much. So this is what it says. Lady Hawksworth, your husband is not dead. With those words, Lara's life turned upside down. Hunter, Earl of Hawksworth, has been lost at sea, or so she'd been told. Their unhappy marriage, with its cold caresses and passionless kisses, was over. But now a powerful, virile man stood before her, telling secrets only a husband could know, and vowing she would once again be his wife in every way. While Laura couldn't deny that this man with his smoldering dark eyes resembled Hunter, he was attentive and loving in ways he never was before. Soon she desperately wanted to believe, with every beat of her heart, that this stranger was truly her husband. But had this rake reformed, or was Laura being seduced by a cunning stranger? So some of the things I can say without spoiling this, because again, we'll talk about this at book club, is that so someone else has already become the new Earl. I think it's a cousin of Hunter or an uncle or something like that is now the Earl. So she's been moved to the dower house, and she's kind of being mistreated a little bit. She's just been pushed onto the side. Laura loves to be involved with charities, and there's an orphanage she's very deeply involved with. And so she's been kind of deprived of her due. Like, there's a certain amount of money as a widow that she's supposed to get from the estate, and it's kind of been kept from her because the Hunter's relatives like to say that she would just waste the funds, so why give them to her even though she's using them for these things. So having Hunter come back and be willing to, help with all of these things, it's very seductive to her. Also, him paying attention to her and caring about her is so seductive to her. And I can't talk about any other things for it. I gave this 5 stars. Whew. It's so good. There are things I am sure people think are problematic, but as a lover of Lisa Kleypas, I love the kind of men that she writes. I've never had a problem with the alpha males who push things a little too far, who are a little bit too bossy, who are a bit demanding, who maybe use a little bit of manipulation. But Lara is able to meet it stroke for stroke, and I love it. So Lara was not a pushover in any way, even when there's a little bit of manipulation going on in here, and I really enjoyed this story, so it was 5 stars. Then I read a little quickie. I was just going through and seeing what was available to me on Scribd because I'd used up my main Scribd ones. And so I read a book called Billionaire Best Friend by Ainsley Booth. I really enjoy Ainsley Booth. I know that I'm in for a good time. This one was a really cute and very low angst story, which was just what I needed. At 2 times speed, this book, I was able to get through it in 2 hours. It was a quickie while I was cleaning. But this is an age gap, and this is a brother's best friend, but actually it's what it says. He's become her best friend because what happened is when she was going to college, she didn't live very far away from her brother's best friend. And so he would take her out to lunch sometimes. He would look out for her. And this is when she was in college. So she was too young back then. Now she is in a position where she can take over a part of her grandmother's business, but her grandmother wants her to be married and settle down, which again, I'm not a huge fan of this in a contemporary setting, especially with her grandmother, who is a powerful, badass woman, telling her granddaughter, who's trying to be a powerful, badass woman, that she needs to get married to be a powerful, badass woman. I was just like, Grandma, what are you doing here? But anyway, and so she ends up with her friend deciding that maybe she'll hire an escort or an actor to pretend to be her fiance or whatever, and then have a fake marriage with them and all these things. And so when she tells this to her billionaire best friend, he's like, how about you let me vet someone for you? And so he ends up pretending to be this guy. The thing about it that made it so sweet is that when things get to a point where they get revealed, there's very low angst about it. That's the thing that I will say, okay? When it's revealed what he's doing, there's no huge explosion by her and she's just like, fuck you for doing this to me, you lied to me. There's more of a wow, you're willing to marry me for this? So that's a bit of a spoiler that I'm saying, but I wanted to say why I feel like it's so different and angst-free is it ended up just being this really beautiful friends to lovers between these friends because he was willing to help her out, but he's also like, I'm willing to be married to you for real forever because I see the things in you that you're my best friend. And I couldn't do better than that. And I thought that was really romantic and sweet. So I gave it 4 stars, mostly because this was novella length. It was only 150 pages and I wanted more from them. But I also knew that if it had been full length, it probably would have had a bunch of conflict it didn't need, but still, it was a 4-star read worth of enjoyment. Then I decided to, back up. So then I decided to go through Audible Plus because every month or so I go through to see if there's any new books on there that I want to try out or whatever, because I do keep my Audible subscription. I purchase a lot of books. I buy a lot of stuff straight from Audible. I just do. And I ended up finding a lot of books on Audible Plus, so I'm going to tell you about some of them, specifically some darker romances. But one I found that wasn't so dark, it was called Wanderlust by Lauren Blakely, and this is actually read by Mr. Thornton himself, Richard Armitage. And this was a really sweet, it's set in Paris, and it actually reminded me of Emily in Paris a little bit. And so it literally is this woman who works for a perfume company, goes there to help with one of their side offices. And our hero is actually a translator there. And so they meet, have this fantastic connection, and then they find out that this is her new translator. And so they end up becoming friends. They're like, we can't mix business and pleasure for this. but of course it is really building between them. And there's a little bit more going on in there. See, our hero is actually only going to be in Paris for a certain amount of time. She's supposed to be there for a full year. She's contracted to live there for a year, but he is only planning to be there for another few weeks. Like, he's just going to be translating at the beginning of this job because he has some bucket list items that he would like to fulfill. So they feel like they're on kind of a ticking clock. This was very enjoyable. This has some really heartwarming things of it. Trigger warning for loss of a loved one. But this was just a really beautiful book. It definitely made me tear up a few times, and I gave it 4 stars. Then a bunch of other books that we found. This is going to be fun. So I listened to Killian by Natasha Knight. This was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Her brother had got into some trouble with a mob, and so she promises to... Is this the one where it's every Friday night? Or is it for a solid month? I can't quite remember because you'll see I've read a bunch of these, but she is supposed to... I think it's every Friday for like 3 months or something. I can't remember. But she is basically supposed to submit herself sexually to this mob boss and Killian. So it was great. It was 4 stars. It was dark and sexy. And of course, he has a secret heart of gold. It's a thing. Then I listened to, and I'm going to say both of them because it's the same book from different POVs. And I don't always like that. But the stories actually built upon each other very beautifully. So I read Sweet Captivity by Julia Sykes. This book was fascinating. So this is about an FBI analyst who's recently become a field agent. And she's kind of in love with her best friend who's a field agent. Very much Garcia vibes, okay? If you watch Criminal Minds and you love Garcia, think Garcia, but more like if she was in field work and, you know, a little bit more fit, a little bit more like she can handle herself. But she has that same, like, she was an analyst, so she has a really quick brain. And she ends up getting caught. And they don't believe her that she is, like, they think she's a spy. I can't remember exactly the situation. But the capo decides to hand her over to his brother for training. Okay? Decides to hand him over. So now his brother has been pretty abused by him. And he's afraid of his brother. He's also been humiliated by his brother. There's a whole bunch of layers to it. But basically, she is going to be his brother's sex slave until she's willing to do what they want. This book was so emotional. You're going to see, I read a lot of books about sex slavery this month, and I completely understand if you guys can't handle that or don't want to read about it, okay? Like, I get it. This one was beautiful because, and it's really kind of funny, so this had a virgin heroine, but she had done a lot of research into BDSM because her best friend, who she's obsessed with, she knows that he likes BDSM. She's, you know, so she knows a lot about it, and she is very interested in it. And so when our hero starts training her, he discovers that she actually is a naturally submissive and she likes everything that's happening. And so he becomes obsessed with her. And so we see their whole journey from her point of view, which is very powerful. And again, I don't want to spoil anything. If you're someone who loves captive books, I highly recommend. If you don't, it's fine if you move along. But then I read Claiming My Sweet Captive, which again, same book, but from the point of view of the hero who is doing it. And when you're in his head and you're seeing how he feels about her, and that all the training that he's doing and the things that he's doing is to keep her from death. It was really beautiful. And I ended up giving this one, from his point of view, 5 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really loved this hero. And it did something to me. It did something to me. In here. So another one that I finally listened to Midnight with the Devil by Emma Castle. This book, I was given this book as a gift. And I wanted it because it's by Emma Castle, who wrote Love in the Wild. So this book is actually about the devil, who is Lucius Nightstar, or Lucius Star. What is he going by? Lucian star. And he needs to corrupt pure souls to keep the gates of hell strong and to keep everyone in it. And so there's this woman named Diana, and her father is dying. And so he makes a deal with her that he will heal her father of cancer if she will. This is the one where it's every Friday for 3 months. This is the one. See, I knew that I'd read 2 where the captive stuff was kind of the same. I'm sorry. So that one, Killian, it's she belongs to him for a month. And this one is every Friday for 3 months. She is supposed to come to him and be his whatever he wants from her. From midnight until dawn, she belongs to him. And this involves sex mostly, but also he gets kind of hung up on her because this is a fantasy, and he ends up wanting to see her outside of that time, but that's like on his time that he will choose to like see her and is kind of integrating himself into her life. But it turns out that Diana, she's also being watched by one of the angels, because she has a great purpose for her life. And we don't know what this great purpose is, but basically the angel is warning him, is like, she's not a soul that you can have for hell. And he's like, doesn't matter, I'm corrupting her. She's going to be mine when she dies. And the angel's like, well, you'll see, but I'm protecting her and keeping an eye on her. So we have these two, we literally have heaven and hell kind of fighting over this one girl. This is a pretty quick book. It's only 200 pages. I listened to the audio for this one, and it was freaking delightful. And I know that she has another book in this series where it's not connected, but it's the same kind of like edginess. So this is Midnight with the Devil. I gave Midnight with the Devil, I think I gave this 4 stars. It was a good time. It reminded me a lot of like Lucifer, the TV show, where he is like living in the human world. He owns a sex club in the human world and stuff like that. Okay, then I finally read, guys, I finally did it. I read the Monster in His Eyes trilogy by J.M. Darhower. Okay, so I read Monster in His Eyes, Torture to Her Soul, and Target on Their Backs. This is a series you guys have been mentioning to me since I very first ever tiptoed into Mafia. I actually even read the Sempre and Sempre Redemption by J.M. Darhower. And wow. So this book is an age gap. Quite an age gap, about like 18 years. And this girl gets drugged at a club and then gets brought home and rescued by this guy named Ignacio. And she's like, why'd you bring me home? What are you doing? And he's like, well, what was I supposed to do with you? I don't have an address to take you to. Like, where was I supposed to go? So nothing happens between them that night. But when he brings her back to college, he asks her out on a date. And so most of this whole first book is just this really beautiful age gap romance where he is kind of spoiling her. They're building this amazing connection. I really, really loved the sexy times in this one because they're definitely into some BDSM between the two of them. And whenever they want it to be a bit of an edgier experience, he'll be like, do you want to play around? And then that's the sign. And there's safe words in this one, everything. So this is a more like BDSM in the bedroom situation. However, this is called Monster in His Eyes, and this is also a Mafia series. So even though we don't see his ties to the Mafia for quite a long time in the first book, I feel like it's not a spoiler to tell you that there is Mafia stuff happening in here. The first book is completely from the POV of the heroine. The second book is completely from the POV of the hero, and it is dealing with the fallout from the first book and everything that happened. And then the third book is a dual POV of the both of them, and just continues their story on and on. And guys, so I gave the first 2 books 5 stars, loved it. The third one I gave a 4-star, and my reason being, I was okay with the heroine being duplicitous in the first one, even though there were some serious hints. I will chalk it up to her being only 19 in that one, as well as just being kind of swept up in how wonderful this hero was, because he's very wonderful to her, and then having the rug pulled out from under her and finding some things out that are just horrible. Like, I will give her being pretty bitchy to him and how that happened a pass. But by the time we get to the third book, the things that we know and the fact that she is still with him when he's given her chances to go at different points, she's still with him. When she still will hold certain things against him, I was starting to get a little irritated because I'm like, girl, you know who this man is. You love him. You want to be with him. You need to get on board. But I feel that way about heroines in dark romances a lot of times. I get irritated with that, right? Okay, so then the last 3 books I want to talk about are the Freedom Fighter series by Pam Godwin. I started reading this trilogy. I had quite a while ago when they were put into packs. I purchased Deliver Us, and then the second pack is called From Evil. And the series is going to be 9 books. The last one actually comes out in just a week, I think. But it's called Deliver. And I was terrified to read this series, okay? Because obviously when I read Sea of Ruin and, you know, before that I read Dark Notes, I, of course, know that Pam Godwin has this sex slave series. And I was like, I don't think that I can do it. But then I was thinking to myself a couple things. Number one, I had just read some books this week that had sex slavery in them. And they all had, you know, I was like, Pam Godwin has written, year over year, I've had a book of hers on my favorites list. Okay, both Dark Notes and then Sea of Ruin. And I was like, for there to be 9 books in this series and for people to be so excited for it, I know there has to be good in here, you know? And so I was like, Pam, I'm going to let you take me on a journey. So I ended up buying the pack of 3. You can actually get it on Audible, and it's $35 to buy it. But if you use a credit, if you get the pack of 3 credits, you literally are getting this pack of 3 books for only $11.99. So I did it. It has some of my favorite male narrators in it. And so I listened to Deliver, the first one. This first one is about a woman named Liv, who she herself is a sex slave or was kidnapped as one. And she, along with her partner Van, not her partner as in like their partners, they do have sex, but not as in them being partners, but as like they do this job together. They will kidnap either a young man or woman and train them and then sell them for $1 million. And they do this because there's this man named Mr. E who makes them do it. And we don't know why, we don't know the setup of this. But it starts with this 20-year-old like seminary student named Josh, who's a virgin, because the next buyer requires a male virgin. And they spend months and months researching who they will take. And he's a very high risk capture because he has a family who loves him and pays attention to him, and he's a football star, and he gets kidnapped and is going to be trained by Liv to be a sexual submissive. And yeah, that's the story. Like, yeah. And I gave it 4.5 stars. All right. Then I read both Vanquish and Disclaim. And I gave both of those books 5 stars. I can't really tell you what those ones are about without ruining the first book. So I am going to tell you what Vanquish is about, but I'm going to put up a spoiler tag. Because even telling you what this one's about is a spoiler for the first one. Okay? So I highly recommend this series only if you like really dark romance. Obviously, there is non-consent. There's rape happening. Female rape upon a male through pegging happening, as well as assault by the other male who's helping here. So this is not, like, I highly am recommending if you're okay with dark romance and assault and slavery happening. Okay? Like, that's what's happening. So, spoiler for Vanquish. Vanquish is the story of the male slave trader who we find out he was also forced into this as well. But he was in love with Liv. And he is wanting to like have her back to himself. But she's with, you know, Josh from the last one. And so he ends up deciding to kidnap someone to replace Liv in his life. He's like, I'm going to kidnap someone, make them my slave, but they'll just be for me. Like, I'm going to take them for me. So he's a psycho. But he ends up kidnapping Liv and Josh's next door neighbor, who's a woman with agoraphobia and literally like physically will pass out and shake and be freaked out if she's out of her house. So he bites off more than he can chew. And I loved it because we see Van brought to his knees. Okay, then Disclaim, which again, spoilers for the first one, so I'm going to put a spoiler take up again because I'm even telling you who this is about. But the reason this series is called Freedom Fighters is that Liv, who has been training these people and selling them, she wasn't really selling them. When she would go to deliver a slave, she would fucking murder the person who is buying it, and she would release the slave that she just trained for 10 weeks. So she has done that 9 times. So the reason I'm telling you that is because the books after 1 and 2, almost the rest of the series is about these slaves who've been freed and the different ways that they are trying to free other people who are in sexual slavery. And that is why this series, being one of the darkest series I've ever read, is so fucking powerful and gave me so much hope. But you don't know that going into the first one. And it's like, I don't want to spoil it, but I also want you to know what this series is as a whole. Because the third book is about one of those slaves, because these freed slaves work with Liv now, and they are working on, well, not just with her, because she and Josh are kind of like, she's like retired from this game, you know, she's freed these people that she trained, and her and Josh are trying to live their lives, but they're still involved when asked. And Van will help too, which is great. But Camila was one of the first slaves who was freed, and she actually, like, she's so badass. The first scene of this book is her letting a guy go down on her, and then she puts him in a chokehold and knocks him out, and then brings him to Van's house so they can torture him to find out who his, like, buyers are of slaves. And there is this Colombian sex trafficking ring that she wants to infiltrate. So she gets her friends to sell her into slavery so she can be on the inside of this ring. She is the baddest ass fucking woman ever. I love her so much. So, anyway, it's like a spoiler just to tell you what these books are about, but I just wanted to tell you why I was reading them. Not that I have to explain myself, but this being one of the darkest series I've ever read also has some of the most hope, because they are going in, because they literally have no fear left. After what was done to them, they are able to go into these dark, desperate places to rescue others and to bring other young people and slaves home. And I loved it. I love them. I'm reading the 4th one right now. I have every confidence that I will binge my way through these. So you'll hear more in my March updates about how we're doing. But we will end it there. So that was 18 books. A lot of trilogies and series that I read, and it was fantastic. So thank you so much for watching this. Again, thank you to the new channel members. I'm so happy to have you. Make sure you check out the interview tonight with Sarah MacLean if you're so inclined. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.